Hi there, this is Rob Hall with Lucky Dogs Lure Coursing. We're here today to introduce you to our two systems that we manufacture right here in the USA, both our residential and our commercial systems. They essentially do the same job, but the commercial machine's built for 300-yard courses at about 58 miles an hour, and the residential system can handle about 150-yard courses, and they'll handle it at about 35 miles an hour. So both very capable machines. Has a little bit more power on the big boy as far as if you'll need to get ahead of the faster dogs and have them, if they're cutting off corners, you have a little bit more maneuverability there. But both systems come with the pulleys and the stakes and the string that you'll need to get started with. The residential includes 5 pulleys, the commercial includes 6. So these pulleys are hard, solid milled plastic, stainless steel bearing systems. We're real proud of them. It's really what holds the system together there and streamlines the speed. It also includes the string that you'll need. We have this made custom for this system. This is 250 braided Dacron. We do highly recommend that you reorder it from us at the website. We've tested for years and years, and I have this stuff custom made just specifically for us, so I found that this really does work the best with the system. You can go ahead and try other things, but I don't recommend it. It also comes with the stakes. These are the stakes that you're going to put in the back of the machine to secure it to the ground. So all this will be in the package, ready to go and ready for you to put out for tons of fun for your puppy. All right, before we get to the setup of the machine and the pulley placement and how you want to have the machine positioned, you first need to assess what you're looking at with the ground that you're going to be running the dogs on. So what you're looking for is, if you have the opportunity for something like this where it's perfectly flat and beautiful, this is your best setup. The system can handle undulations in the ground, and we'll get to that in a later part of the video where I can show you to use the pulleys to pin it on high side and valley side. You can overcome those hills. But this is what you're looking for, is a nice mowed surface, because the length of the grass is going to have an effect on the speed of the system. Taller grass, it's going to drag on the system more. The lure is going to be dragging through that. Eventually, as you operate over through the day, it will cut a path through a lot of that stuff, but it will affect the speed and performance of it. So you got to keep that in mind. You don't want to be running through tall stuff. So in addition to turf and trees, you need to watch for other things on the ground as well, any obstacles. You're going to want to avoid rocks. You're going to want to avoid sprinklers, drains, holes, roots, anything that the pup could step on, or anything that could possibly rub against a line that would cause it to break. You need to take a really close look at the condition and the grounds that you're working on. Trace the path of the dog. Analyze the ground to see if there's any debris laying on there. If you're going to be working in municipal environments, sometimes they use them from open parties and things like that. There may be debris on the ground, so you really need to scan the ground that you're working with. Take the time to take a look. You'll be rewarded in the long run. All right, so now a brief introduction to our pulleys. The pulleys is what determines the whole shape and size of your course. But one quick point on maintenance of the pulleys. This is pretty much the only maintenance you have to do on the system. I do recommend that you squirt a little bit of WD-40 or some kind of oil lubricant, but WD is the best. Give it a little spin there. That'll absorb into the needle bearing set in there, and they will work perfectly for years and years and years. So now we need to take them, determine where we're going to place them in the field by just using our standard nail. Place them wherever we want our turns to be, and have our course set up. Now that you've chosen a spot suitable for running, now let's talk a little bit about the equipment setup. First thing we need is an electrical source. Now we use a standard 110 plug-in, that's what we're running off of right now. You can also use a generator, and we're going to talk about that a little bit in the future, about how to operate off of generators. But today we're just going to work on the plug-in. So I've picked a spot for the machine, so now I need to go out in the field and place the pulleys. I'm not going to set the machine just yet, because you're going to want to turn the angle of the machine, and I'll show you about that, about how we increase the ride around on the wheel. So now I'm going to go place the pulleys out in the field. Hammer and nail. All right, now that we've got our pulleys placed out in the field, now it's time to string the line. So I suggest tying to the handle. It's a simple little knot. And either using your fingers or using a combination of one of the stakes to unravel it. Wrap it around the back of the pulley, close the top. All right, now time for the final setup and tying of the knot. All right, now that we've got the string run all around the course, now we have to cut the line and tie it to the other end to make it a continuous loop system. So what I'll do is I'll run the whole system here. Now there's going to be one more pulley that we're going to put down that I call the tensioning pulley that's going to tighten the whole system. So we're not worried about tension yet, but we do need to cut the cord and tie it into the other side. So I'll go to the center of the machine where it's already tied. And what I do is I tie in an extra tail right off of this to tie in the lures. So I cut about that far past, give myself a little extra room. All right, so now that we've got the line cut to length, we need to tie it into a knot to create a continuous loop system here. So I tie mine with one side longer, that's where we're gonna tie the lure to, and this other short side where we're just gonna end up having eventually trim it. So I use a roll over a blood knot. There's the diagram of how to tie this knot on the owner's manual. But basically you go 1, 2, 3 times around. And then you come behind the other line and you got to hold that loop. Then you go 1, 2, 3, and you come back through the same hole that you created with the other line. Now I know this is a little bit complicated, but on the diagram you'll see how to do this. So once we got this together, the way this knot comes together is it creates a little roll into on each side. So when you tighten this down, what you get is a nice smooth roll over. So when it grows over the pulleys, it'll hit a nice smooth edge instead of being just a jagged knotted system. All right, so now we've got the string run, and now we have to position the machine so that we get the most ride around time on the drive wheel. Now I'll show you the angles visually here in a second. So here we go. First we're going to stake the machine down. I'll show you this angle of how I'm picking it here in a minute. But basically where the line is coming in, pulley's out that way, that's a good spot for this machine. So we go ahead and we put the 2 stakes down, and you may have to make an adjustment. But that seems to be pretty good for the way we're going to set it up, and I'll show you why here in a second. So all you do, open up the front. There's the big drive wheel. Let's make sure that that line goes around the back. Don't wrap it around the whole line or the whole wheel, just around the back. So now what we have to do is we have our last pulley that we have to put in place. So now we'll kind of shift around and I will show you. So if you go ahead. So now we're going to place the last pulley, and this actually creates the tension in the system. So what I'm doing is basically getting it out in front of the machine, and I'm going to show you, if you can look at where this is, the line coming in here and the line going out to the next pulley of contact. We want to try and create the most ride around time on the wheel. So this is a good placement point. This is also where you're going to set your tension for the system. So this is where you got to get it pretty tight. And we'll talk about tensioning here in the future. All right, now we need to talk about line tensioning and retensioning. Tension is what holds the whole thing together, and since we don't wrap the line around the drive wheel, tension is what holds the line against that drive wheel. So through the course of operations, the line loosens up a little bit, it maybe cuts a path through the grass a little bit better, and you'll start to notice that maybe the responsiveness when you hit the gas is not quite there. You need to retension your system. So what I do is, in the diagram, if you refer to the owner's manual, you'll see that I place always a tensioner pulley near the machine. I place it near me just so it's more convenient to change as I'm throughout the course of operations. So if you've been running and this line's getting loose, all you got to do is just take this and then just retension it. Just pull it up, move it up a little bit further. Now you're going to get used to the tension. It has to be at a high tension level. Not too tight, but not too loose. I know that sounds kind of weird, but after operating for a while, you'll get the tension. If it's too tight, you'll hear it in the machine. There'll be almost a mechanical loping noise. That's too tight. Loosen it up at that point. But if you hit the gas and you see that the lure is not being responsive, it's tensioning. That's 90% of the problem every time. Just when you think it's maybe not quite tight enough, tighten it, or just a little too tight, tighten a little bit more. That's probably going to be correct. All right, so now we're at the point where it's time to tie the lure onto the line. So if you remember earlier there, I tied in this little extra bit to tie the lure to. So what I do is I take it through. What we're using is basic standard grocery bags, the Thank You for Shopping at Anywhere USA bag. They're easy. It's you don't want to use too bulky of a bag because it'll bind through the pulleys, but just the cheapest thank you bag that you can find works fantastic. And as far as tying it, you just want to pull it out to where it's at the furthest point in the handles, like this, and then just do a basic double knot. That'll usually be good enough. You may have to retighten your knot, but just a basic double knot. Now the only thing you can't forget, with the bag, you have to cut the bottom off. Because if we didn't cut the bottom off, this balloon, it would balloon up and get caught and not pass through the pulleys. Very important part. So I'll do that, trim up a little excess, trim up my excess. Now we're ready to test the course. All right, so let's talk about some of the operation, safety operation and operation of the machine. So the operation of the machine is very simple. It is just a squeeze trigger. The harder you squeeze it, the faster it goes. So as you'll see, running down course. Harder I squeeze the trigger, faster it goes. So we can go from everything from bulldog speed, just putzing along, to we can full on kick it. So as you can also see, the direction is changeable. So on the controller, just above the throttle, there's a lever. You just switch that, goes the other direction. Switch it, goes the other direction. Just that easy. So it's at your fingertips, the control for the direction. So there it is. Easy to set up, easy to operate, and with a little bit of practice and time, you'll just get better and better. Your dog will be happier and healthier, and everybody will have a blast. So make the first step and get ready for fun. Our dog's the worst example.
Good. She knows it by heart.
All right, to some safety sides of it. When you're operating, you're going to have something to be able to cut the string. Now this is a safety feature just in case one of the dogs attacks it and tumbles into the line. Never happens, but you need to be prepared to deal with it. So have a pair of scissors or a knife in your pocket. One more tip for your course setup, fencing selection. We suggest that you use poly poles. They're plastic poles that will bend quite a bit. And then we also suggest using hurricane fencing, which is going to be a soft plastic type fencing. Wind goes through it nicely. It gives quite a bit if a dog has to use it a little bit or bounces off the side. And we also recommend that it be high contrast. Oranges, yellows, things that are bright contrast to what you're going to be working in. You want to contrast against grass and turf. All right, couple tips just to get dogs going. Depends on what situation you're working with them in, whether it's a fun run or if you're doing the fast cat. Fast cat, this is not going to be a problem to get them going. But sometimes not all the dogs get it immediately, or they just don't quite understand what you're asking from them. So a lot of the things you can play off the tendency to chase the ball. So once you get used to controlling a little bit, you'll kind of figure out how you can do this. But the basic tossing the ball trick is always a very good one, where you ball it up there, pretend it's a ball, and then pretend to throw it. Now it looks easy, but it takes some timing to get that down. But it really does work, and the dogs that key off of the ball and retrieve drive, this really gets them going quite well. And then having mom or dad introduce it, that's always a good start, because then the puppy knows that it's a gift from their mommy or daddy to them, and that usually can get them going. Agitation for some of the more aggressive breeds, smarter breeds. Sometimes you just got to wiggle it around, or maybe make it race around a little bit to show them that it's really worth their time to chase it. The last and most important thing that you need to watch out for is the fatigue of the dogs that you're working with. There's going to be different levels for every dog, so you need to be really in tune with who you're working with. You need to be able to see there's losing a step, that their side tongue's hanging out, that they're getting fatigued. And no matter how much of an athlete they are, it's an absolute maximum 2-minute run. No matter what the condition level is, you have to stop it at a certain point. That's for the dog, that's for everybody. Just got to be keenly aware of what you're working with. A lot of these dogs may be couch riders and have been sitting on the couch for a while, and now they get excited and they're ready to run, so they'll overdo it. So you need to be very responsible in your operations and your duration. Once the dog's completed a run, try to give that dog minimum 30-minute cool down, just so they can get their heart rate down. Some of them will say, if they're around the course and watching, they can't cool down, they can't calm down. So you really got to pay attention to that in the dog as well. So give them some cool down time. All right, a quick bit on electrical supply. Our systems run on a standard 110 volt system, so makes it really easy if you have an electrical source, plug it into an extension cord. The only warning is make sure it's a good electrical source. You can see some variations in voltage. Some places such as campgrounds, fairgrounds, they have a tendency sometimes to drop voltage, so you need to check and make sure it's good. This is a 10 amp system that pulls in a standard 120 volts. So that calculates out to 1200 watts. Now that's important if we're going to try and run off generators. Now generators are just fine to run off of. This one is a 1600 watt continuous 2000 peak. So it is, even at its lowest point, it can still always handle the 1200 watts that this thing pulls. Only thing you need to worry about in generator operation is running in eco mode or idle down mode, or any version where the motor will step itself down for energy conservation, and then when it senses a peak in electricity, it ramps up. That is creating a low voltage situation until the generator gets up to speed. I'm going to demonstrate for you on this one. So what I'll do is I'll start this up, and then I will run it in eco mode, and you'll hear when I squeeze the trigger how it ramps up. That is exactly what you don't want to do, so I'm just going to show you. Okay, so the generator's now running in eco mode. So you'll hear when I squeeze the trigger that the generator's going to ramp up. Squeeze the trigger, squeeze the trigger. You can hear the thing ramping up, and that's creating a low voltage situation. Make sure that your eco mode is off. When I turn the eco mode off, the engine is going to ramp up to its full capacity. It's going to maintain electrical charge, and you'll be good to go for the whole day. So you're going to hear a ramp up. Now when I squeeze the trigger, to only be a slight increase. I have full power out there. go. Generators are good, eco mode bad.